You know, during a football telecast, you never seem to have time to get in depth of football, things you really want to get into. Well, I've written a couple books. I coached a Super Bowl team. I've announced 3 of them. I thought, what the heck? Why not do a video? You know what I mean? Where you can really get in to X's and O's, nuts and bolts. The guys in the trenches. You can talk about nose tackles, linebackers, those goofy eyes, defensive backs, the real hitters, the great quarterbacks. We can watch classic footage. We can watch guys like Jim Brown, Joe Namath, Johnny Unitas, all the great ones that ever played the game. So what the heck? I'll be a coach again. You be the players.
I played for Coach Madden in a couple of, all-star games, and the impression is he's the type of guy you want to play for. He enjoys the game of football.
Madden is on the field. He wants to know if it's real. They said yes. Get your big butt out of here. He does.
He was so irate at one of the officials that we had to calm him down. I think he yelled so loud that he tore some cartilage in his ribs.
Really, what you see on television right now is the way John Madden was. It's the way I remember John Madden.
Madden is just enraged on the Raiders sideline.
He analyzes football, but he loves to analyze people. He can't figure me out yet.
Hey, enough of that. Let's get started here. You know what I like about football? The excitement of it, the unknown. You never know what's going to happen, who's going to win. What kind of play is it going to be? Is it going to be the great pass by the quarterback? Is it going to be the great run that wins it? Is it going to be the great defensive play? Boom, the big hit. Or maybe it's going to be a kicker. But before we do that, let's freshen up in the basics. Let's go down into the locker room. We'll talk at the chalkboard. Let's start off with formations. You know, we always talk about the strong side and the weak side. Okay, now you always have a center. Then you have a guard on either side of the center, right guard, left guard, then a tackle on either side of the guards. So these guys, that's your offensive line, and they always stay the same. Now the tight end can go right or left. And if he goes to the right side, then that's strong right. If he were over on the left side, then that would be a strong left formation. Now how about defenses? Basically, every defense is either a 4-man line with 3 linebackers or a 3-man line with 4 linebackers. Now here we have the 3-man line. So you have a nose tackle here, and you have 2 defensive ends, right and left. They're the 3-man line of the 3-4. Then, of course, you have the 4 linebackers. Now this linebacker, because he's on the weak side or open side, he would be the weak side linebacker. This linebacker, because he's on the tight end, and that means the strong side, he'd be the strong side linebacker. These 2 guys are the inside linebackers. So that's the 3-4, strong right. Now let's go to the secondary. The 2 guys on the outside are called the corners. And basically, they cover the outside receivers or they zone the outside areas. Now, the 2 inside guys are the safeties. Now, since this is a strong side, because the tight end is here, this defensive back on this side is called the strong safety. The defensive back on the other side is called the weak safety or the free safety. Now, you know, we always talk about the nickel defense, the dime defense, the quarter defense. What that means, instead of having 4 defensive back, a nickel is 5, a dime is 6, and of course, if you went 7 defensive backs, that would be a quarter. Now, how do you do that? You take out 1 linebacker. If you take out an inside linebacker, you add a 5th defensive back, and that's a nickel back. You take out both inside linebackers, then you would have a 6th defensive back. Now, the way you get to a quarter or 7th defensive back is you take out an outside linebacker. So you take out the strong side linebacker, then you can add the 7th defensive back or the quarter defense. Now let's look at a mistake that most people make when watching a football game. They always watch the ball. And watch what a quarterback will do in that situation. Okay, right now, where's the ball? We don't know. The quarterback doesn't want you to know. See what he did? He faked the run and threw the pass for the touchdown. In fact, that's what a good offense wants to do, or a good quarterback. They want to show you something, make you think they're going that way, and then boom, they go back that way. In fact, the real good quarterbacks, the great quarterbacks, are almost magicians. Bart Starr was a great ball handler. Watch the fake here. He gets the free safety up here thinking it's run. What does he do? He fakes the run, and look, there's no one in the middle of the field for the defense. But it's not always pass. Frankie Albert, the old 49er quarterback, he makes a fake here. He makes this guy think it's run to the right. Boom, he fakes it, and he runs around the defensive end. And of course, Joe Montana. Watch this fake. He holds these two inside linebackers so the tight end can get by him and wide open. That's a big part of the 49er offense, and Joe Montana makes it work.
It becomes a big part of fooling the underneath people. We have a hard enough time throwing the ball because usually when we line up, people are thinking pass anyway, so you really have to work with the handling of the ball and trying to hide it a little more.
No matter how guys like Joe try and hide it, I always taught our defense, don't look at the quarterback. Don't watch the ball anyway. And I think that's not a bad thing for fans. Well, what do you watch? I've always thought that these three guys in the middle, right here, the center and the left guard and the right guard, the middle of the offensive line will tell you what's going on.
If you watch a football game, you just watch the running plays primarily, even a pass play, is watch the three inside interior linemen, the center and the two guards. They'll tell you where the ball's going to be.
See, now what Ray Nitschke said is he would line up here and watch these three guys. Now, I always added one more. I added the fullback. And I told our linebackers to key the triangle. In other words, the center, both guards, and the fullback. Now, what do you look for? What do you key? Well, if it's an inside run, they're going to run right at you. The center and both guards will fire out, and the fullback comes straight. That's an inside run. Now, if it's an outside run, the guards will pull. So they're telling you right now it's a run to the outside. The fullback starts out here. So you can start reading that. How do you know if it's a pass? Well, these guys have to pass block. You're not watching a quarterback. You don't care what he does. If this guy starts back, he starts back, he starts back, then you start back because it's a pass. I used to always have a rule for my linebacker. If he comes, you come. If he goes, then you go. See, and you don't even watch this guy at all. You know, the quarterbacks and the offense can have all these plays. They can have fancy runs and fancy passes, but if they don't have the offensive line, these five guys right here make it all possible. And I've always thought of the offensive line, the real solid guys on a football team, especially the center.
Well, every football player has to be dedicated to what he's doing, and in most cases, I feel that centers are the most dedicated player on the field. They, in all history, if you look around, they play longer than anybody else, and the old saying was, well, they never had anybody directly over their nose. Well, we do, and we in the American Conference always had someone directly over the center's nose just about every single play.
Jim Otto had a lot of nose tackles. Today with the 3-4, that's about all they see. Watch Mike Webster here. The biggest thing for the center is to be able to snap the ball and then get your hands up on that guy. Watch here, to be able to cut him off on the run, to be able to pass protect with and without help, but getting those hands up there. Watch the center here. He has to beat the nose tackle with his hands. See right there, boom. He had his hands up there before the nose tackle. That way, he has a chance. So it's quickness, the center against the nose tackle.
Well, I'm not going to get blasted. I wouldn't allow that. You know, I mean, I grew up against the best, and when I went into that game, I wasn't going to get blasted by anybody. Sure, I took my knocks. I had my nose broken many times, or I had teeth chipped, a lot of stitches in my face and stuff like that, but that was part of the game. You know, you were expected to come out of there with either drawing somebody's blood or a little bit of your own.
The center, the heart of the offensive line. But you see, against a 4-3, there was no one over him. So mostly he was responsible for blocking that middle linebacker. And what he wanted to do was to get on him. Watch Dave Dalby for the Raiders in Super Bowl 11. It's a draw play. He sets up. Now he comes out after the middle linebacker, trying to position himself between the linebacker and the ball carrier. Now, of course, they also have to help on pass protection. One of the best is Dwight Stevenson of the Miami Dolphins. Watch him right here. He's blocking here, but he sees a blitz coming. He's able to get off the block and, boom, pick up that blitz and get the completion. You know, the offensive linemen are really the core of an offensive football team. But a lot of things that they do are kind of passive, especially pass protection, where they have to be under control and keep their body between the defensive lineman and the quarterback. But I always told my guys, look, just because it's passive doesn't mean you have to be a pass. You can hit and hit aggressively. Now, offensive linemen, they were always the biggest kid in the class. You know, when they were in grammar school, they were that big guy that their aggressions were always thwarted. Anytime they would do anything aggressively to a classmate who was smaller, someone would say, don't be a bully, you're bigger than him, don't pick on him. So now he comes to high school. He's going to be a football player, biggest kid in the class. And you say, okay, you're an offensive lineman. Now be aggressive. Well, how can you be aggressive? You just can't turn it on. So what I used to do is the first time you want him to hit something, you don't want him to get hit back. And they say, hey, this is no fun. This is no deal here. So we used to hit these big bags. And I used to tell my guys, just take it out. Just boom, 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 because you see it can't hit back. Get some of that aggression out of there. Become aggressive. And then you have a real offensive lineman.
You want someone that has what we call, or what John used to call, controlled anger. That's important. You got to be a tough guy. You got to want to do it. You got to be like us. Unlike the defensive lineman, they got a nasty demeanor about them. You know, everything they do is just all out and aggressive. You go in their locker room and you look at their lockers, it's all messy. That's the demeanor of a defensive lineman. An offensive lineman, he's a controlled guy. You go in his locker room, everything is nice and neat, you know. So it's a controlled anger or controlled toughness that you have to have.
Art Shell and Gene Upshaw were the left side of the Oakland Raider line. A lot of people thought that we ran to the left a lot because Kenny Stabler was left-handed. Not at all. The reason was because Art Shell and Gene Upshaw were such good blockers. You know, you like your left guard to be the quicker because he's the guy who usually does most of the pulling. Now, he has to be big enough to stand in there and block, but then he has to be quick enough, boom, to get to the outside. Remember Fuzzy Thurston and Jerry Kramer of the Green Bay Packers under Vince Lombardi. They also have to be able to run a trap to the inside. What's a trap? That's when you let a defensive lineman go, then you bring the guard from the other side to kick him out, boom, just as the ball carrier gets there. Then the draw play, it's a little finesse. Watch this. The linemen make it look like it's a pass. They get the defensive lineman to rush up the field, then the quarterback delays and hands to the running back on a draw. I'll tell you, pass protection is tough. It's a battle. All it is keeping that guy off the quarterback. But when you do it, you feel as good as a quarterback. Watch how important a left tackle is. He has to keep his inside foot up, the outside foot out, so that he can just ride the guy to the outside. I'll tell you, that left tackle is probably the most important position. One, because he blocks the toughest pass rusher, and two, he's protecting that quarterback's backside. Now you can see why they don't mind a holding penalty once in a while.
If it comes to holding, right? Holding. Or sack, hold their ass.
Holding is something that it happens. I mean, it's the natural thing to do once you start losing someone is to grab on. If you fall off a cliff, what do? You grab on to something, the closest thing you can, in order to support yourself. When I played, the most important thing to me was my quarterback. I will take 10 yards if I feel I'm getting beat clean. I will take the 10 or 15-yard penalty because I don't want to see him laying up on a table. We can come back from 15 yards, but we can't come back from a guy being on the table getting a knife.
Now we come to the backbone of the offense, the quarterback. You know, it used to be the quarterback was called a field general. He was a real leader of the team because he used to get in the huddle and he'd call the plays. And he could look up at his guys and he'd say, can you block that guy? Can you do this? Can you do this? Can you beat that guy? And they'd say, yeah, and then he'd call the play. I mean, that's what it was all about. But it's really not that way anymore. Now, this thing has come into football. Computer. The coaches work during the week, boom, 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 they press. This is how you do it. I can see the day that there's going to be a computer on either sideline. It's going to be your computer against my computer. The quarterback comes over the sideline, boom. They push a button, stuff starts going like this. Just pull out the play, off tackle to the right, I got it. I hope it doesn't come to that. I don't think it will. But now guys like Dan Marino can come in and be an instant success. You know, in his second year, Dan threw 48 touchdown passes. That's an NFL single-season record, and the Dolphins made it all the way to the Super Bowl. In the old days, it took years to groom your quarterback into a field general, a coach in the huddle like Bart Starr was, like Ken Stabler was. Great quarterbacks are great leaders. Someone once said being in a huddle with Johnny Unitas is like being in a huddle with God.
I think the biggest thing is that you have to have mental toughness. You have to understand what you're doing there, and you have to have complete confidence in your ability, and confidence, more important, in the people that are in front of you.
I think the great ones all led their teams. Different ways. You know, a lot of times we think of leadership as being verbal, and it's not necessarily verbal. Kenny Stabler, John's quarterback, was a great leader, and he was not a particularly verbal person.
Lenny Dawson, I thought, was an excellent quarterback, but he was a very quiet quarterback. You go back and you hear some of the stories of the great Bobby Lane, how he used to yell and scream and grab his players by the throat because to pick them up, to make them better players. So everybody does it a little differently. But the bottom line is to get it done, and the bottom line is the players have to believe that what you're doing is real and not just fabricated.
It just has to be in your personality, and so that when you step in the huddle, people know that you're confident because you're confident all the time.
There's no question that Dan Fouts is in charge of the San Diego huddle. Let's listen in.
All right, here we go. Split right open. Split right open. Bronco right, 844 Ricky on White. Ready? Red ball, red ball! Red ball! 11, that's okay. 11! Set, go! That's a good-looking play there! How about that? Great block. There you go, Keller. Good job, Kel. Way to fight in there for me, babe. Way to go, Jimmy. No, skin.
Dan Fouts is an example of a quarterback with a quick release. He gets back there, sees a receiver, boom, the ball's in the air. Quarterbacks don't want to spend a lot of time holding the ball and waiting. Terry Bradshaw was that way, always getting rid of the ball. Joe Namath, you could never get to the guy. That's what they talk about, quick release, releasing the ball before you can get to him. You always look at Joe Namath and think he couldn't move, but he can always do that. Just move enough to get away from the rush and get a completed pass. That's why I always thought the most important thing in a quarterback is what he had from the waist up. All these things in here. Now, not necessarily down here. Now, Fran Tarkenton, of course, he had this. He could run, he could move, he could scramble, he could get around. But where he was really successful and what made him a great quarterback were these things right here. You know, look at Dan Marino. Not great from the waist down, but look at that strong arm and the quick release. Now, Roger Staubach, he had it right here, the vision. Being able to see the whole field. Out there, boom, find anyone that's open. Terry Bradshaw, of course, had those things, plus he was strong, and he led the Steelers to 4 Super Bowls. You know, talking about Super Bowls in the NFL, it looks like if a team doesn't have a great quarterback, if they don't have the Terry Bradshaw, if they don't have a Bart Starr, there's no way that you can get to a Super Bowl. The NFL is a league for quarterbacks. You look at the Super Bowls, it's like a Hall of Fame for the quarterbacks. Joe Namath, Lenny Dawson, Roger Staubach. Joe Montana. You know, you can have running backs, offensive line, defensive line, but if you don't have the great quarterback, you're not going to the Super Bowl. You know, we thought in this video is we're looking at quarterbacks, talking about quarterbacks. Let's hear from one of the great ones how he did it. Johnny Unitas.
If you're taking the football, you'll want to take it and bring it up high in this position here, and then be able to throw it from over top rather than out here as a side armor or down in here. A lot of guys who are young kids have a tendency to pick up the ball and want to throw it from out here. This puts an awful lot of stress and strain on the shoulder. The ideal way, which would be to take it from the center, is to bring it up high and then get it back behind your ear. Hold it with 2 hands because your hand is not large enough for the one. Therefore, taking the stress and strain off your shoulder, and when you throw, you step toward your target and then in a follow-through motion.
You also want those shoulders open. Watch Joe Montana's left arm, how that opens here to give him vision of the whole field.
When you're releasing the ball, you're taking your left shoulder for right-handers through and throwing the ball, so that you usually end up pretty square, and you have to get your shoulder out of the way to get your throwing arm there. It's kind of tough to throw back across to your body. You don't get anything on it, and, you know, especially for me, I'm not an arm thrower like some of the bigger guys like Dan Marino is, or he can get away with just his arm. I need all the body I can get.
If you have the left shoulder closed, it also cuts off part of the field. See the closed left shoulder? No way he can see back this way. The defense knows that, and they get an interception. You know, they talk about quarterback reads, looking at the defense. You know, the quarterback only has 3 to 5 seconds. So whatever he does, he has to do it quickly. I always thought they should just see everything, find the open guy, boom, and hit him. But there aren't pre-snap reads. There are things you can do to help your quarterback. One is motion. For example, if you put this guy in motion, if this safety runs with him, you know it's man-to-man defense. If you put him in motion and he comes off, it's a zone. Now watch here. See, he sees the motion. The safety doesn't run over with him. He knows it's zone, so he just hits the underneath receiver. You know, a quarterback would love it if the picture would look like this to him. But he does get that help. Throughout this video, we'll try and take you to places you've never been and show you things you've never seen. And this is one of them. This is the press box where the assistant coaches sit during the game. Now, when they're up here, they can see the whole field. They can see the defenses and what they're trying to do. They can see the offenses and how they're trying to attack their defenses. So when a quarterback comes over and picks up the phone, now you know who he's talking to. He's talking to the coach who's up here. And he sees things, they say, look, the last time we were in 3rd and short, they did this. The next time, we're going to think of doing this. Then the quarterback remembers. So that's one way they help. The other way they help the quarterback is with these. They take Polaroids. Then they can show them what the defense is doing. The offense is on the right, defense on the left. They show the quarterback, this is what they did on 2nd and 7. Now, 3rd down, what'd they do? The last time we were in 3rd down, this is what they did.
And they sit up there and they do these things, you know, and you'll get down and say, well, 3 out of 4 times now, every time you come up with a 3rd and 4 or under, they got a blitz. And if they can get that information to me prior to going into the ball game or during the ball game, when I come up with that kind of a situation, 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5, somewhere in that area, I'm going to call a play that's going to kill them.
All quarterbacks love that, a play that'll kill them. I'll tell you another thing about quarterbacks. They have to be fearless guys. They have to stand in there, and they can't worry about things. They have to have fun. The game has to be fun. They have to put everything they have into it. Let the coaches worry. Okay, let's get on to the running backs. Believe it or not, that's how most running backs get started. You know, someone once said the running back is a kid who was never it. And I'm sure that guys like Gale Sayers and O.J. Simpson and Jim Brown, those guys, when they were kids, they were never it. Someone was always chasing them, could never catch them. And they were probably always a running back. In grammar school, high school, college, always played the same position. And it's natural.
My ultimate goal was to score and to try to make people miss. You know, it's like playing keep away as a kid, and that's the way I tried to play on the football field.
Believe it or not, when I was growing up in Columbia, Mississippi, I used to go out and play football, one-man football. Can you imagine in my front yard what I'd take the football and I would think out a situation. It's 3rd down, we got to go for so many yards and so many seconds in the game. What I would do is I would take the ball in one hand and I would throw it, and then I would have to run and catch it. And then normally I'd end up diving for it, I'd jumping over bushes or whatever. It was a lot of fun. You know, it's funny that the things that you could do by yourself to entertain yourself and to keep you going.
A great running back will have one great instinctive running ability. He just has a feel. He has a feel for the goal line. He has a feel for the defenders and how to get around and outside them and over them, as Jim Brown did. Then Eric Dickerson. He has great vision. He knows where the tacklers are, he knows where they're coming from, and instinctively, he knows what to do about it. And O.J. Simpson, he had all those moves, all those things, all those feels. just knew where the end zone was. And like Tony Dorsett, they never seemed to take a hard hit.
When I was out on the football field, it wasn't to kind of prove any manhood or anything. I was out there to have a good time, and I had a good time, and I approached the game as a game, so I didn't feel that I had to knock a guy out or put my head down at the last minute and make him pay a price.
But some of them do like to knock them out. You get the kind that avoid the collisions and some that make collisions. John Riggins was that type of guy. Walter Payton was that type of guy. Jimmy Taylor, just go shoulder to shoulder. Keep those legs moving and find the end zone. But that's what a fullback has to do. A fullback has to pick up those tough yards for you. The short yardage, the goal line, get the ball in the end zone. One of the best was this guy, Larry Zonka. Halfback is a quick guy, the fullback is a power guy. You know, the second thing for a great all-around running back is to be able to block. Now, a lot of that is pride, just wanting to and being able to work on it, spend time doing it. You know, as you're watching a game at home, the way you can tell who the great running backs are and the great blockers is when they don't have to take the guy out. When you see a guy run, make a big play, then you see him come back, stay in the game, and block for the other guy. That's what Marcus Allen has. You don't take him out of the game. You don't take Walter Payton, William Andrews. You don't take those guys out of the game. The good ones like to do it. The great ones, like Walter Payton, they love to do it.
I tell you what makes me feel good is when quarterback drops back to throw a pass and the safety's blitzing or the linebacker's blitzing and your assignment is somewhere else, but your guy, you have him or he's out of the way, then you peel back and just as he's getting ready to get to the quarterback, you know, you turn his lights out, you know, and the quarterback throws the ball and gets a touch. That's good.
That's why Walter Payton is such a great player. He runs, he blocks, and he catches. And that's the third criteria for a running back, being able to get open and catch the ball. One of the best is Roger Craig of the San Francisco 49ers. He's a guy that'll gain 1,000 yards rushing and also catch for over 1,000 yards in a year. Now let's watch a pass pattern and see how the whole thing works. Here's the weak side, X. Here's the tight end, he's a Y, and the flanker's a Z. And, of course, the two running backs. Now, because the running backs are 4.5 yards behind the line of scrimmage, they're going to run shorter pattern, shorter distance than the receivers that are on the line. But you hope that they all break open about the same time. Now let's watch a pattern as the quarterback sees it. Now he's ready to throw. This is what he sees. He sees his guys across the board here. He has to pick the open guy and get it to him. And that's why they have to all have good hands. You know, the wide receiver has to have speed and quickness. He has to be able to get open. But once he gets open, he has to be able to catch the ball. He has to have good hands. Now, what are good hands? Good hands are the two hands working together, working as one. I know when I was coach of the Oakland Raiders, the way that I taught, the way that I developed those hands to work together is punching a speed bag. Now you say, why or what would a football player be doing punching a speed bag? Well, that's how you get both hands to work together. Because the right hits at the left, the right, the left, and then they get both hands. And then when the ball goes over there, boom, both hands are there. Ball goes this way, boom, both hands are there. They don't go as one, they go as two.
It means really eye-hand coordination more than anything. And the ability to be able to know where the ball is going when it's thrown. I think that's what helped me more than anything else was just I had a lot of speed, and the speed along with just the ability to know where the ball was going to come down really helped me.
Lance Allworth played with the San Diego Chargers, then later the Dallas Cowboys. But he's one of the best that ever played the game. He was a home run hitter. So was Paul Warfield. That's what speed will do to you. You know, you got to play off, and you're always worried about that big one. Then if you're like the Steelers, you win 4 Super Bowls, you got 2 of them. You have Lynn Swann on one side, he'll make that acrobatic catch. Then on the other side, you have John Stallworth, who could really do it all. He would catch the short one, the medium, and go deep on you. And I'll tell you, that was tough for other teams. Who do you double? The other thing John Stallworth could do is he could catch the ball wherever it was thrown. He's going to tell us how he did it.
The ball is low. You want to catch the ball down like this. Your thumbs pointed to the inside like this. Catch the ball and tuck it away. Gives you an excellent opportunity to put the ball here and to automatically just bring it into your body. Ball is high, hands up, thumbs pointed toward each other. Ball comes in, thumbs primarily taking away the momentum of the ball, and you watch it in, clasp around the ball to secure it, and you bring it in to tuck it away.
Now, Fred Biletnikoff had those hands, but he didn't have the great speed, but he had those moves. You see what he would do? He would get the defender turn one way and then go back the other way. Raymond Berry was the same way. You make him think you're going one way, and then whap, you go the other way. Let's watch it on a pass pattern. Here we see the receiver has a release. He wants to get outside of this defensive back who has a man-to-man. So he comes outside, gives him the move here, and then the break. The move to hold him, and then the break to run away. Watch him. He'll come off the line. He knows he's going to go out, so he gets outside the receiver, holds him there, then boom, to the outside. One of the all-time greats was Don Maynard of the New York Jets. You know, he caught 633 passes, and he averaged almost 19 yards per catch. Now, those are home runs. Look at that long stride he had. I'll tell you, he could gobble up that ground. And another guy who was a combination of the speed and the moves is Charlie Joyner, San Diego Chargers. He always seems to come up with that clutch catch.
You got to have an ability to, or a need to catch the ball. Some people find a way to just step in front of somebody, leap over somebody, crawl under somebody to catch the ball.
You know, when I think of those kind of catches, I remember Dwight Clark's catch in the 1981 championship game against the Dallas Cowboys. Who could forget that one? Or how about this catch in Super Bowl X? Lynn Swann. You know, they always talk about concentration. What is concentration? Right there. Or how about Otis Taylor being able to catch that ball up over his shoulder? Or a clutch catch, Warren Wells. 7 seconds to go against the New York Jets. Those are the wide receivers. Now we get to the tight ends. Kellen Winslow, of course, of the San Diego Chargers. He's a different guy. He lines up all over the place. But usually the tight end will line up here or here, right next to the tackle. And he's usually a big guy like John Mackey, who was strong to be a blocker, but also could get open and catch passes and then run over defenders. Mike Ditka, the Chicago Bear head coach, he was a tight end. The big, strong guy, the tough guy, who could also get deep. Now, Dave Casper of the Oakland Raiders was one of the best of all time. He could block as well as an offensive lineman, but could also catch that deep pass. Another one I had was Raymond Chester, an All-Pro. I'll tell you, they have to be special people to block and catch.
The tight end plays left, right, depends on the formation. He blocks the linebacker, he blocks ends, he blocks combination blocks, double teams with the tackle. He blocks downfield. He runs possession patterns, he runs combination patterns. Runs combination patterns with the Z on the strong side, combination patterns with the X on the weak side, combinations with the fullback. So a tight end, I think, has to be a guy who is pretty aware of what the coach and what the team, overall team philosophy is offensively. You got to know pretty much what you're doing to play tight end.
Of course, Raymond was a tight end, and here's where he would line up sometimes. But as he told you, X, Y, Z, all over the field, versatile, blocking, doing all those things. And if you can understand that, then you're ready to play in the NFL. Now, what happens on long yardage, third and long? We talk about situation substitution. We talk about 3 wide receivers, 4 wide receivers. Well, why not? If it's third and long, you know you're going to throw. They know you're going to throw. People in the stands know you're going to throw. So there's no reason to fool them anymore. So you may as well get in as many wide receivers as you can. So do you ever think of who comes out when that third wide receiver goes in? Well, usually the first guy they take out is the fullback, because he's usually, of all the receivers, he's the least of the receivers. So the fullback comes out and a third wide receiver comes in. Now, you say, how do they get to the fourth wide receiver? Well, usually the tight end is bigger and not as quick as a wide receiver. So if you know you're going to throw, you don't need the blocker anymore, so then you don't need your tight end there. So that's how you get to your 4 wide receivers. Usually first you take out the fullback, Second, you take out the tight end, and then you got your 1, 2, 3, 4 wide receivers. And, of course, they can line up anywhere. Now, what's the defense going to do? That's when they go to their 5, 6, 7 defensive backs, the nickel, dime, and quarter that we talked about. Okay, that's the offense. Quarterback, solid offensive line, good receivers, good catching, good blocking backs, all those things. But how about the guys that are trying to stop them? The defense. Days of the 4-3 defense, this is where the middle linebacker roamed, right here in the middle of the field. This was his. When you talk about guys like Dick Butkus, Ray Nitschke, Willie Lanier, Sam Huff, those guys were right here in the middle looking at everything, and that was theirs. No one was going to come in here. If you ran inside from tackle to tackle, boom, boom, they were right there. If it was a pass, they'd drop back, and again, the middle was theirs. No one had better come across that middle, or they were going to let them know, hey, this is my country right here.
When you entered into the middle, you were dog meat. I mean, there was no such thing as running a 5-yard hook in the middle and turning your head to look for the ball. I mean, Niski would literally take your head off.
You know, anybody, a pass receiver, lineman, or anybody, you hit them, you know. So, but now you can't hit them 5 yards down the field, so I couldn't play it now.
You know, in the 4-3 defense, the middle linebacker was a quarterback of the defense, making all the adjustments. Guys like Dick Butkus. Then when they get down in the goal line for the inside run, they're probably the most important guy. Watch Jack Reynolds right here. He's the middle linebacker, he and the fullback. Fullback starts here, he starts here, and watch the collision in the hole. The fullback square, Reynolds squares, boom, stop, nothing. Great goal line stand. Then you think of Jack Lambert. Watch him take off blockers, boom, boom, and then get on the tackler. You know, when Jack Lambert played the middle for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he had Jack Ham and Andy Russell on either side of him, I think that was one of the best set of linebackers that ever played in the National Football League. Bobby Bell of the Kansas City Chiefs, I'll tell you, he was tough. But with today's defenses in the 3-man line, the star of it is now that weak side linebacker, the guy that plays on the open side, like Ted Hendricks, can come from either side, good pass rusher, there's no way you can block him with a running back. Of course, the New England Patriots have the same thing in Andre Tippett. Lawrence Taylor of the New York Giants. You don't want those guys to line up against air.
Lawrence Taylor has a combination of power and speed. You can't let him get started. I think you have to block him right away. You have to keep him occupied with somebody in his face. If he's able to get that sense that he can start running and attacking you, boy, he's too much to handle.
Now, talking about too much to handle, we'll talk about the defensive linemen. You know, we start off with the defensive ends. You think of those guys, the big pass rushers, like Bubba Smith, Deacon Jones, guys like that their bread and butter is that speed, quickness, and, of course, the quarterback sacks. One of the first pass rush specialists in the game was Gino Marchetti of the Baltimore Colts. He had the two things that you have to be a good pass rusher. You have to have good speed and strong hands. The hands that you can take the blocker and push him off or pull him off. The other thing is the speed where you can just run right by a tackle. Just race the tackle to the quarterback. If you have speed like Cedric Hardman, you'll win that battle a lot of times. Now here's good hand. Watch this. You get your hands right here on the blocker. Now you have to be able to take that blocker and just pull or push him off and then get back in and make the tackle. It's hard to be a great pass rusher as a defensive end like right here in a 3-man line because there's no tackle inside you. And if you get wide like this and you come to the outside, boom, you see what happens? They just run the ball back to your inside. Now, it's hard to be a very good run player and pass rusher. But Howie Long of the Raiders is one of those guys. He's strong enough that he can play the run, play the line of scrimmage, handle that line of scrimmage, and he has enough quickness and speed to be this type of pass rusher. But he learned from other guys.
I copied myself after Leroy Selman, Joe Klecko, and Randy White in many ways. I took a lot of Klecko's strength moves. I took a lot of Randy White's quickness type moves, and Leroy Selman was, in my opinion, the textbook defensive end. Really played the game the way it was supposed to be played. At 245 pounds, made a lot of 300-pound people look bad.
Howie Long lines up all over the place. Look, here he is as a right end. He's going against the left tackle in pass protection. To the back of the quarterback. He gets him there. Now he lines up over here at left end. He's going to work on the right tackle in the face of the quarterback. Boom, he gets him then. You say he's always an end. No, here he is right here. He's a nose tackle up over the center, getting on the quarterback.
The ends are important, but if you're going to play a three-man line, this guy right here is the most important guy in the line. He's a nose tackle. Because if they're going to run, they have to get movement on him. They have to get him going backwards. If he wins this battle and gets in here, it's almost impossible to run the football.
You know, a lot of times it's an underrated guy like Jim Burt, but they play a big part of a defense's success. I think maybe the best nose tackle that ever played was Curly Colt, who played for the Kansas City Chiefs and the Houston Oilers. He was born to be a nose tackle, just built like a nose tackle had to be. Not that tall, but very big, very strong, and very quick. You couldn't get him blocked when you wanted to pass, and when you ran, he was like another linebacker.
The centers never did like those nose tackles. The centers never liked Curly Colt. Now that's in a 3-4, the nose tackle. Now when you go to a 4-3, you don't have a nose tackle. You have a middle linebacker over the center, and you have two defensive tackles. Now teams that played this successfully usually had one big, strong guy who would stay at home. In other words, he would play this area. He would take the middle, wouldn't leave that area much. He'd wait for the draw, for the screen, the quarterback scramble. Then you had one guy who would chase. He'd take off, boom, inside, boom, outside, right over, jump over, do all that stuff. And this guy stays at home, boom, this guy's a runner. Now, of course, if you had two great athletes, two great chasers, well, maybe you'd have them both chase and not use a stay-at-home guy.
To my way of thinking, teams would be better off if both tackles were active and moving. It seems to me that the more commotion that the interior defensive lineman can cause, the better off a defense will be, the better chance of the offensive play breaking down.
The Minnesota Vikings had a great front four. They were nicknamed the Purple People Eaters. But the catalyst of that group was Alan Page. He was the guy who made things happen, boom, right now. That's what a defensive tackle did in the 4-3. Another one was Joe Green. You talk about a guy who was tough. They called him Mean Joe Green. He said he really wasn't, but watch him here. Boom, he just takes on guys, throws them down, grabs face mask, anything he can. He was tough to block. But so was this guy, Buck Buchanan. Those are the guys who would be all over the field, and it was tough to pass. And talking about passing, who has to take responsibility when they do get it away? That's those defensive backs, the last bastion of your team's defense.
You know, the loneliest guy in a team also has to be the most confident guy. And who is that? That's a defensive back, specifically the corner. You say, why? Okay, the defensive linemen, they have the linebackers behind them if they make a mistake. The linebackers have the secondary behind them. Now, the corner, he's out here covering man-to-man. If his guy gets behind him, there's no one there. And everyone in the stadium knows that's his guy.
It takes a person who is, like I say, who gets fearless, who's not afraid, and who have a lot of confidence in his ability, and a lot of confidence to the point where that he believed that nothing can happen to him. He believed that he gonna make the play rather than the receiver make the play. Just gotta have that kind of confidence.
The kind of confidence Willie Brown had. He'd get right up on the receiver, dare him, shadow him all the way down the field. He wouldn't let him get open unless he wanted him to.
I could play in a whole game and not even have a pass thrown my way. So the next week I would say, well, let me just pretend like a guy had me beat and just hope that the quarterback would throw the ball over there at least once in a game. But and I find myself slacking off sometime, and there again I find myself slacking off sometime and get beat, you know, occasionally. Occasionally, I say now, but not often.
As far as I was concerned, the best that I ever played against was Willie Brown. And Willie was just a super football player, and he was big, he was as fast as I was, and as far as I was concerned, I really had to get mentally ready to play him. He's tough. I love playing against him because they were great games.
Wide receivers have to get mentally ready, and here's why. Look at some of these battles. You know, when we think of battles, we think of the trenches. We think of linebackers and defensive linemen. But look at some of these defensive backs out here on wide receivers. I'll tell you, there's some wild things that go on out there, too. Now, here's a point in man-to-man coverage. You want to take away a side. You don't get in front of the guy. You either take away the inside, as this guy's doing here, and give him the outside and run him there, or you take away the outside and force him to the inside. But you never get square on him. Let's watch a man-to-man coverage in a team concept. Here's man-to-man right here. Strong safety on the tight end here. These guys are man-to-man, and, of course, the free safety. Now watch what happens. We saw earlier, we saw a man go in motion. Now when he goes in motion, if it's a zone, no one runs with him. Now if the cornerback runs with him and takes him all the way, the whole thing is going to be a man-to-man defense. Now watch the motion come here. See him go across. Now the cornerback runs all the way across with him. He has him wherever he goes. That's the difference between man-to-man and zone defense. Okay, now those are the cornerbacks. Now we go to the safeties. The guy that plays the inside. We talked about the middle linebackers where they have control of the inside short. The inside deep, that's these guys, the safeties.
Now the strong safety is called strong safety because he lines up on the strong side of the formation on the side of the tight end. And a man-to-man coverage, he would cover the tight end. Now this guy is a different type of guy. He has to be half defensive back because if it's a pass, he has to be able to cover the linebacker if it's man-to-man, or he has to play pass defense like a defensive back does in a zone. Now, if it's a run, he has to play like another linebacker because when the offense starts out here in a sweep, who do you think has the outside hole? You know who has the inside stuff. That's the nose tackle, the linebackers, those guys. But if you come on a sweep, the guy that has the force of the support is the strong safety. He has to get up here. Now, who's usually blocking him? It's usually a big guard who comes out on it. So you got a guy at 200 pounds here taking on a 270-pound guy. So he has to be able to do that on a run. Then he has to be able to get back and cover on a pass. Now, usually that type of guy is the biggest of your defensive backs, like Dick Anderson of the Miami Dolphins used to be. I had George Atkinson. George Atkinson wasn't a big guy, but he was so quick that he could do all those type of things. He could get underneath a guard. He could cover any type of receiver. That's what the strong safety is. Now the other safety, the weak safety, or the free safety. Why do you call them free safety? Well, in man-to-man, we know that the corners are man-to-man on the outside receiver. We just talked about the strong side safety being man-to-man on the tight end. Now when those guys are man-to-man on the tight end, the linebackers have the backs. That means that this guy, the weak safety or free safety, has no one. He's free. He's free to help this corner. He's free to come over and help on the tight end or to come all the way over here and help on the flanker. He's also free just to get back in the middle of the field, read and react to the pass. Now, if this guy is a tackler, if he's like Jake Scott used to be, if he's like Jack Tatum, then you get a big plus because he can do those things on the pass, but then when you run, whap, he can come up there and hit it like a linebacker. I tell you, that's like having 12 men in the field.
Another thing the safeties do is get up here in the line of scrimmage and blitz the quarterback. The old safety blitz. You see one there, here's another one. Safety coming right up the middle, right there, boom, right on the quarterback. I tell you, when you can get that safety up there and spring him free on the quarterback, that sets up these special teams, the kicking situation. You know, a lot of times we think of kickers and we remember Garo Yepremian in the Super Bowl. We remember this pass, and we say, kickers are kind of flaky. But I'll tell you, that did happen. Those things do happen. They have some block. Some funny things happen to kickers. But some of them were great athletes, like Jan Stenerud. He was a skier before he ever started kicking a football in the NFL, and he won a lot of games for Hank Stram. Then there was Lou Groza. He was a starting tackle. He would block for Otto Graham, block, and then come in and get the big kick for the Browns. That was like my partner, Pat Summerall. Those guys were football players who also kicked. They did other things. And I had a great one for years, George Blanda. George Blanda was a football player. He was a quarterback. And when you needed a kicker, he became your kicker. But now they just all seem to be just kickers. And they have some idiosyncrasies, like Ray Wershing here. He never looks at the goalpost, just the hash mark. Never look up.
That started about 10 years ago when I was with the San Diego Chargers. At that time, I didn't wear contacts and I didn't wear glasses. So when I'd look up, and I did, I'd see a couple of fuzzy poles. And I was going, well, this isn't doing me any good. So I just started focusing in on one spot on the grass where the holder would place the ball. And it just started from there. Joe Montana is the holder now. He does a great job. And what I do sometimes is kind of like pat him on the back just to relax me. And I take my steps back, one, and go back to my left. And here we go.
Kicking is like a golf swing. Head down, follow through.
Every time I see kickers, I think of Ralph Benershka when he was a rookie with the Raiders. You know, when you have a rookie kicker in training camp, you don't have any way to know if he can kick under pressure. So what you have to do is you have to create pressure situations for him. So what I used to do at the end of practice, I'd bring up the whole team to watch him kick. Put the ball 45 yards away, and I'd say, you kick it. If you make it, no wind sprints for the whole team. You all go in. If you miss, they do twice as many wind sprints. Now that's pressure.
And now you got Matuzak and Otis Sistrunk and all these guys that you'd seen on television for years yelling at you that if you miss, you might as well start running the other way. It was a bit intimidating, but it was Coach Madden's way of preparing us for the kinds of pressures he felt we were going to be under. I made it, thank goodness.
Yeah, he did make it. And he made a lot of others over the years for the San Diego Chargers. You know, the kickers stand around the whole game, and then they come in these clutch situations. How about this kick? Super Bowl V. Jim O'Brien is only a rookie for the Baltimore Colts. And it was only a 32-yard field goal, but it's a big part of Super Bowl history because that won the game and the Super Bowl for the Colts. As I said, the other guys, they play the whole game. They go bang, do this, in the clip, running, passing, tackling, and then they lose on a kick. You know, the punter has to be a good athlete. Not only being able to kick the ball, but being able to field it, to catch it clean, keep it away from his body. Ray Guy is super at that. He was also super at this, getting the ball up in the air, called hang time, so that your defenders can get down under the kick and get a play like this. It's just like a sack. But you talk about a bonus. Here's a real bonus. When you can punt the ball and come up with a fumble, because that will take everything out of the other team. Look how the defenders feel here. They had just stopped the other team, and now they have to go right back out in the field again. Billy White Shoes Johnson of the Houston Oilers was one of the all-time greats. Had very sure hands, would always catch the ball. Then after he caught the ball, he knew what to do with it. Watch how he uses his blockers here.
Well, we've talked about offense and defense in the kicking game. But how about putting it all together? How do you play the game? Well, that's strategy. Now, most strategy is determined by where you are in the field. You see, you have certain plays for each part of the field. You can't do everything everywhere. So you have your game plan is determined by where you are.
For example, you start out in this area coming off the goal line, from the goal line to the 5-yard line. That's called the get out of trouble area. You want to get the ball off the goal line past the 5-yard line, because if you have to punt, then your punter has the full 15 yards. Now, once you get the ball beyond the 5-yard line, now you work in this area between the 5 and the 20 just to get a first down. Still staying solid. You can't afford a turnover down here. Now, of course, once you get in the middle between the 20s, then you can open up. Then you can have your trick plays. You don't want to try the trick plays getting out of trouble or going in. But like the Giants did in Super Bowl 21 against the Denver Broncos, that's the time for the old flea flicker. Especially when it works like this. But you don't want to do that coming out or going in. Now when you get inside the 20, you want your best runs and your best passes. Now if you have a quarterback like Jim McMahon who can move, you may add a little movement to it to get him to the outside to have the option run or pass. Now you get down there in the goal line, inside the 5-yard line. That's where you put in all your big guys, toe-to-toe. Everyone just going boom down there in the goal line. We remember this play, Bart Starr, quarterback sneak against the Dallas Cowboys. But that's where you make the money. That's where you get the touchdowns. Who wins down in the goal line?
Well, that's a strategy. That's what the coaches do. We've talked about offense, defense, the kicking game. We've heard from some great players. We've seen some great players. We've showed you some things that you've never seen before or heard before. And we could go on and on like this for hours. But what the heck? I'll save that for my next video. But thanks for watching.